Shamika. Welcome to the Millennial Podcast. We are so glad to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Yes, the purpose of this podcast is very seemingly inclined with your career graph. And to begin with, I would want to say what a career graph you had, Shamika. Like you had like a journey which is pivoted from a well-established lawyer to starting from the scratch with an idea on the paper. So, like,
Mm.
what was that epiphany when you thought that, okay, this is what I want to do?
I think for several years before I did the pivot, and I think that might be a common ground for many people, like, you sort of sit on something for many years because, instantly to sort of give up a well-established or at least, a career where you've spent enough number of years and education, because it's like a 5-year law degree. Then I got a master's in law. I worked in law for a few years and that. So, you sort of sit and simmer on a particular idea or the idea to even pivot for a few years before you actually do it. And it was similar with me as well. Like, I think maybe 3 years before I actually pivoted, and then 2 years I worked on you, and then I launched it. So maybe go back 5 years. So I think from 2014 is when I had it in mind to sort of, take an entrepreneurial path in my mind. I actually remember it very clearly. I was in Hong Kong I was doing a traineeship at the ICC, International Chambers of Commerce. And, I was like, after I finish this and I go back to India and maybe I want to move out of law and I want to start something on my own. And at the time, the idea I had was, I thought the market in India is so, in the category of services, it's so disorganized. Like, as someone who's always sort of lived away from home, set up my own sort of apartment for work, getting plumbers, carpenters, and this and that. I was like, that industry is so unorganized, but there is so much need for it. So we should do something like, which then I landed back in India, and Urban Clap, but at that time it was called something else.
Yeah.
And like they had launched it. So I was like, okay, it's never about the idea. It's about who gets to the execution, obviously, first. But yeah, so that bug of doing something or starting something on my own has always been around. But then you need to, and I think this might be similar in a lot of people's journey, is that then you find something that really fuels that fire in your belly and then sort of pushes you from just thinking about it to then start doing something about it.
Yeah. I mean, most of the people get that epiphany of an idea or like you said, the need, and then they sort of pivoting from what they're doing to, what, like, I think I can make, that itch that starts wherein, I'd rather do this. So I think that's what starts then. So I thought it's very similar to that, but you were like quite clear in your mind of not moving forward with your then career, like
with law, yes,
and wanting to do something. So I thought the idea was first, because you've gone quite specific with like a science-led skincare brand. Which is like almost like, it has to be born out of a passion.
It was born out of a passion. But I also think that, a lot of young people struggle with not being able to find their calling. And sometimes, like for me, that, I want to start a beauty brand didn't sit with me for like, it was an idea that came to me 5 years ago. It's with evolution and journey, my normal life was taking was when this sort of idea at the point came and I acted upon it, and then this happened. But when you're in that phase in life, when you're not happy with your career, you may still not know what your calling is, but it's equally important to identify what you don't want to do. That's an elimination process and a narrowing down process to getting to what you want to do. I remember very vividly when, before, the idea of you or anything came to my mind, I was like, I want a career where I can sort of, put together the creative side of, which is, I'm very passionate about the creative side of, just doing things, art, and the logical side of my brain, which was anyways trained in law, and, the logical analytical side of business. So I was like, I wish I can find a career that allows me to do both things together. And at that time, I didn't even know that Due would be the answer, where I would get to combine my creative juices along with the, analytical side of how I like to work with things. But maybe there's some manifestation there. And I would go down to, because I was like, okay, I don't know how to get this career, but I know I have this creativity that I want to unleash and have an outlet for. I would go down to the basics and be like, okay, let me start let me start learning graphic designing. I mean, I don't know what career I'm going to do with that, but sometimes you don't have to have the final answers. But when you get those little messages inside, start acting on it in like really tiny ways. Like, you don't know where it eventually leads. And trust me, that experience paid off so much when I actually started you as well. So yeah, you may not have a clear picture, but the little cues, your sixth sense or whatever inside you, your brain is giving you, pick on those cues, keep acting on them. Little, it forms its own path and journey where one day it sort of makes sense.
Exactly. I think it's not spoken enough about how you like find your purpose, or do you create it. And I rather, I rather agree with the other one. People after I started my podcast talking to me about, what, I'm so happy that you're doing this. Once I also find my niche and something that makes me happy, I'm going to go all nuts about it, and I'm going to passionately do it. And I realize that, to be honest, you've got to be in that space at least. So put yourself in positions where you might discover yourself in a way where you then can sort of segue out of it when you're confused. A lot of people who are lucky, they sort of just know what they're meant. They're just like a lot of, see a lot of popular people, and that's why I think that gets so ingrained in us also, that we will also just know. Because I've heard a lot of popular people growing up, like, actors, actresses, and they're like, mujhe bachpan se pata tha that, I wanted to be an actress. And I'm just like, then you start realizing, when I don't know how many professions I wanted to be in. And given a choreograph like yours, in fact, gives us a little more insight into, what you can have the best of both, and then sort of figure out that what makes you happy. And in that position in life, I feel like doing law at whenever you were doing also is what you thought you did.
I mean, I wanted to be a lawyer since I was a kid. Because my father was a doctor, he had a hospital. My sister wanted to, those kid dreams, she wanted to be a teacher. And even at that young age, I'd be like, I'd be a lawyer and I'll convert the hospital into a court. I mean, obviously rubbish, but I didn't know any better. But I did want to do that. But like you said, at the time, it made sense. But if it doesn't make sense to your life's journey at any point, like, don't be afraid to, a lot of people I know just don't pivot or don't move out because they're like, I have spent so much time, money, effort already in it. But whatever you've spent in, there is more than half of your life still left ahead. Is that going to make you happy? Like, if it's not, then how much of a risk? Take calculated risk. I'm not saying, like jump off the edge, but take a calculated risk and pave a path where you can then safely sort of pivot as well. Like, don't leave a job one day when you still don't have anything in your hand, but start building towards a safe landing so that when you pivot, like, you're not going to crash. And there are ways to go about that.
Right. I mean, like you said in the start, you push yourself in, bits by bits. You don't take that entire risk also. While it's fair, while I understand for a lot of us, it's not, just like one decision to make and you next day morning, you're just another person. I understand that. But you put yourself bit by bit into things that you like to just see how much you're willing to risk it. And I feel when you're passionate about something, the risk comes easy to you. It comes very natural because you're so confident about what you're doing. So that way. And a little less spoken fact about it is like nothing goes in vain. Like, we all know it. The skill that, like you said, that the logical part that you were trained in law. And I've had a conversation with my sister. She's also a lawyer, and she also keeps telling me this, that what, now over the 5 years I've been trained a certain way to think about things, and that does profession like doctor, lawyer, any profession which is like, the due course is so long, you tend to sort of start thinking in a certain way. But if there's a certain itch or calling inside you, then you can balance both of it, and that's how it helps. But in your case, tell me, what were the skills that sort of helped you transfer your interest from law to you?
So, while I wouldn't want to even be specific in terms of like law taught me ABC and then that ABC helped me with my current profession, because everyone's going to pivot from a different profession into different profession, right? So the point is the soft skills. See, if you're pivoting from anything into entrepreneurship, understand one thing, that entrepreneurship is about problem solving. Every day is about problem solving. You starting something is you solving a problem, and everything in building what you build is figure outable. Like that's how I looked at it. So if you have the basic smarts, and you can figure out how to get from A to B, you can be an entrepreneur. But it's not easy to figure out it. You can figure out how to go from A to B, but sort of actioning that once you figure out how to do it, and then actually doing the tasks to get you from A to B is what differentiates someone from just having an idea versus actually going ahead and doing it. So whatever profession you might be in my case, I was a lawyer. Being a lawyer taught you to firstly have very objective thinking, having a lot of clarity of thought, being able to distinguish between different problem scenarios. That's a great, like, problem solving, technique or tool. And just, I think, working in a very high pressure environment, like that's something that as lawyers, we all are trained from, and like working under pressure and working overtime all the time. So anything else after being in law feels like a breeze. And like you said, when you're working for something that is so fueled by passion, it doesn't feel like you're working a single day. And of course, I would complain when I was in law, like I was working 18 hours a day in my initial couple of years. Everyone does. Now I work 24/7 every single day, Sunday as well, but not a single day does it feel like work to me. Like that's simply because I'm that passionate about it. So very grateful that I landed here. And going back to a point you said that, you don't really know it's your calling until you sort of stumble upon it. Like I didn't know when I started this would be my calling, but looking back, I'm like, God damn, like I couldn't be doing anything else. I was born to be doing what I'm doing.
But you like get real for a minute here, and as like Naval Ravikant says, like a monthly salary is like highly addictive. So
Yeah.
I realize this now that you say that you already had decided somewhere in your head that I sooner or later this is not going to be it, right?
Yeah.
But when you actually about your resignation, what were the thoughts that were running through in your mind? Because you were at a position where you could have like sorted out your life in another way. It would have been a different tangent altogether, and you were like doing fine. So what were the thoughts that were running in your head and you were fighting through, or what was that one reason that was worth fighting this for? So for anybody who's like going through those doubts or going through the time at this point that you should be safe in order to do things, you do that, but still, how do you start this process? How do you give up something like that?
So like I said, I touched upon this before also. Don't ever do something where just jumping off the cliff without a safety net underneath, right? What that means in practicality is that you have to have certain amount of savings, which are going to, you have to run multiple scenarios. You have to run a scenario where you start something that takes off, and within a timeline of 1 year, 2 years, whatever. You have to run a scenario where you put money, start something, it literally flops. And then you have to run a scenario that you start something, it takes a slow path of growth, but it grows. And in all three scenarios, you need to make sure that you have funds to take care of yourself in that time period. That would be the smart way to, and everyone would do this, but if for some reason people wouldn't think this through, this is the right way to sort of do that. And if you think you haven't reached that place, right, like you don't have enough funds to say take care of yourself for 2 years, see within your support system, friends and family, if they are willing to invest in your idea, what you are proposing to start. See if you can get some sort of loans or funding from your immediate circle itself. It's a validation also if somebody else can trust or put money where the mouth is, sort of, so to speak, into the idea that you're working on. But my point is, have this sort of safety net. You have to have, like, you can't have anything and then jump and then still, great if you do make a success out of it, but if you can't, well, that's hard for. To your point, whether like how was it a big of a decision to leave say a job in law, and then
like whatever you said as yet makes like 100% sense, and it's from a point of view what people would want to do. I want to know like what Shamika was thinking, like what was going on through.
So you again, like these kind of journeys are going to be very, very people specific. Everyone goes through very different things in life. So at the time that I decided to start I was actually out of a job. I didn't have a job. I was at a cusp of a career where I was like, okay, should I get back into law, or should I actually chase something that's been on my mind for a while? And I didn't have a job. I had a bit of savings, and I was like, okay, like, it can't get worse than, not having a job right now. So let me actually chase the thing that's been on my mind for so long. And then I went all out. I think a lot of entrepreneurs I don't know if they do, but struggle with this. At least cautious risk takers do. You sit on something for a while because like once you think in your head for a long time, but when you say it out loud or declare it to even another one human being, it becomes real. You're like, okay, I'm actually going to do it. And that since the time you say it, to it realizing and it taking any tangible form and you presenting it to the world, it's like 1.5 2 years easy. That time period is very, very crucial for entrepreneurs, because you have nothing to show for what you're working. It's all in the works. There is no incoming money that's coming to you, because preparatory work, depending on the nature of what you're starting, is all the gestation period is there, and in that period you're your biggest cheerleader. Like, even you have to keep telling yourself every day that you got this, girl. Like, it wasn't that big a decision in the sense. It actually came to me easy because I was at the cusp of my career. I was like, either I go back into law, and if I go back into law, then I'm not thinking again to pivot into entrepreneurship. And if this has been on my mind for so many years, then I think now there's no better time than now. And how the idea for a beauty brand came, because over the last 10 years I was living in and out of the country for various reasons. And I had seen, when I came back to India at that point, I was working in Australia. I left that job, and then I came back into India. And that's when I was like, okay, now I take up a job in law. I start something on my own. And that's when I saw a gap in the beauty industry, because my vantage point was very different. I was a consumer of a lot of international brands living abroad. And when I couldn't find something that appealed to my sensibilities in India, and most tier 1 people, would be like ordering from Cult Beauty or having their friends from Sephora get them things like that. I was like, why isn't there a sophisticated brand in India that is serving a customer like me? And that became, this thing to sort of work towards. You and sort of launch that, but it wasn't scary until I said it out loud to a person, because then I have to follow through. Now I have to follow through, right? Like once you make that big reveal to your parents, that I'm going to do this. And like my parents, like, they're very like, very traditional, not conservative, but very traditional South Indian sort of family. Like, you do good in school, you have a very nice career, and you be a good girl. And I've sort of always defied that, at least in my career. So it was a difficult conversation, just agreeing in front of them that, hey, I'm now going to do this. They were supportive, but they didn't understand it. They didn't understand what it is that they are being supportive of, but they were supportive, and I'm glad they were. And yeah.
I've read about it. Since you have an overachiever family of sorts, did you feel the pressure, especially switching careers? Like,
yeah, 100%. I felt the pressure. I felt the pressure when I was in law itself. And since the time that I started getting dissatisfied with my career in law is when I started feeling the pressure that I need to do something worthwhile. I need to, like, having and I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe it's not the best thing. I don't know. But I always had this incessant urge to have a very strong self-identity through my professional life. And when I started getting dissatisfied with my career in law is when I started putting that pressure on me that, I need to be doing something worthwhile with my time. I need to be doing something that I feel significant and that is driving some impact. And I was not happy with my career in law. And I was like, okay, what is it going to be? Like, what is going to be my success story? What is going to be the thing that defines, okay, this is what I was born to do. So I've gone through years of that. And something that, I really, and for anyone who is in very low moments of your life or like, whatever, it could be a personal life, it could be a professional life. And when you're at the really bottom low, things that really helped me was listening to stories of failure and not listening to stories of success. Because, someone who's failed in life and then they've risen up to success, That gives me motivation. Listening to only someone's like multiple success stories makes me think like it's not relatable. Because at that point in my life, or maybe in your life, you're at your lowest point, so you need to hear that someone was here and then they went here. If you're
Right.
only listening to stories of someone here, you can't relate to it because you're like, I'm not there yet. So show me someone who was here just like I am now, and then they went up. And
Right.
I would hear podcasts. I would hear so many podcasts, right? And I think podcasts are amazing because there's so many, not necessarily very well known people, but just listening to these stories is very inspiring, and it just takes you through a hard day sometimes. So
Exactly.
I would listen to stories of people who didn't do it and then made it alive.
Right. Yes. But like, how did you really give in to that pressure? Um, like, was that makes you like ambitious? Did you decode that at any point? Like, what was that?
I have tried to, because at some point I've thought that having this incessant urge to have a self identity is not always a positive thing, because
That's
your career shouldn't always dictate your identity, right?
right.
Like you're more than your career, what
Yeah.
person you are, what your soul is, like all of that makes up who you are. And so it's not always a good thing. So I have tried to decode it. Why? But to just clarify, the pressure was not coming from my family. The pressure was I was putting on myself,
Absolutely.
looking at my family and maybe telling myself what I should be at. So that was a self-put pressure. And yeah, I guess that's where like the overambitious nature comes, because I had to have that certain identity for myself. So I have, okay, one thing about me, I've never been a person who dreamt small. I have always dreamt larger than life, and I have always been like, if I think, I'm also a big realist. So if I dream big and I feel that that big dream is achievable, I know I will achieve it. And I work towards it. Not that it lands on my lap. I work towards achieving it. But that's been my personality. I've dreamed big and then sort of, paved a path that I walk towards fulfilling.
A lot of people
Yeah.
my age, in fact, like I'm 24, like already starting like 2 years into corporate life, and they are like, you know what, this is the time. People like at this age, I feel like I have less time, because 18-year-olds have come up with already setting up their
But
YouTube
I mean, this
channel.
is something I want to sort of, share that, like age. I read something really amazing the other day that 20s, use your 20s to experiment. Like it is okay to try 100 different things. And firstly, like, how close you are to the race of, I started something when I was 30.
Yeah.
And at that time, I admit I maybe thought I was too late, like, oh my God, age is behind me. But it's not. I've seen people start brands successfully at 40, at 60 also. The older people, always give the older age examples,
Yeah.
but really 20 is about like try all of the things. Like you have 10 years worth of experimentation in front of you. Like, if you guys say that you don't know what your calling is, great. You're not supposed to know at 20 what your calling is. Try those 50 different things. So one of it can be your calling, and you might not know what it is until you try it. So
I think
at 18 someone's done a startup. I know someone who's done it at 14 also. Does that mean like we're all going to have such distinct journeys? And that really, there's fun in not knowing how your journey is going to
generation
pan
is
out.
like, as much as we would like to believe in everything else, the generation is catching up very fast, because they do have
Yeah.
the right tools, they have the right kind of mentorship also. Given that also really matters, the kind of parenting that now the parents have been like practicing with the kids, that also really
Yeah.
differs. They're very
Yeah.
early on trying them to, I mean, at the age of 5 and 6, the child is doing 5 different activities for them to figure out what they like at the age of
Yeah.
5 6. So I
Got
definitely understand the generation catching up very fast. But having said that, the sort of sad part of having an overachieving family could be pressure. The good part is that you can learn a lot, right? So
Yeah.
that one sort of value that you've held very close to you, that you've learned from people around you, or like, you've seen that very common in the success of whatever the people around you are doing.
I think resilience and grit is what I learned from my father, maybe. So, he's also had a very Papa Prince sort of a journey. Like he started with nothing, really built everything on his own. He's a doctor. But, just like this is something, and I would like to tell the new generation, because honestly, when I hire the new generation, like people quit in like 6 days without saying. People quit in 10, 6, 30 days. Like there is no resilience to stick through. There is no grit people are showing to stick through because so many options have now come, right? So what I learned and what I think is so key for an entrepreneur, or if you're doing anything on your own, is resilience. Like every day is not going to be a good day. You can take maybe days and days to solve one single problem, but it's your grit and resilience that's going to push through, and that's what differentiates you from someone who probably doesn't have a success story, is because they gave up, right? So that resilience and grit is so important. It's the one key thing that you need, and is something that you find very rarely. So I learned that. That's also something that sailed me through the years that I was unhappy with my career.
Right.
Resilience to not give up, just show up every day, even if you're not like happy doing what you have, but have that. I had that faith that I'm going to get to my path of whatever my life's calling is going to be. So have that resilience to just show up even on the bad days.
That's the word. Before we speak about, like, as a skincare science geek, if you were to buy like stocks in like 3 of the brands across the globe, which would they be?
Ooh, so many amazing brands now. Not like I'm getting too many names to just pick 3, but I'll stick with one to make the question simpler. Allies of Skin from Singapore. Yeah.
I think that was the first thought, so I'll buy that because that was like a brainer for you. And again, I'll be foolish to not ask you that what is that skin secret that you wish more people knew, but they don't.
I wish more people knew that how magical your skin naturally is, and it is equipped to do everything. Your skin is equipped to cleanse itself, moisturize itself, soothe itself, exfoliate itself. Your reliance on skincare products should only be for a little bit of a nudge of an assistance to maintain your skin health, but never rely on skincare products so much that you overwhelm your skin into submission, because that is the worst thing you can do. Remember that your skin can do everything that your products can do on its own too. So just keep its skincare products for assistance, not like your skin stops working for itself and your products have to do the job for itself. Yeah.
That's a minimalist advice that we all need at this overwhelming, crowded industry. Thank you, Shamika, for doing this. It was, like I told you, from the time I've just seen your profile and I've seen the trajectory that you've had, I knew I had to speak to someone like you about the entire career graph pivoting and making it still so strong into what you're doing right now. And it means a lot for us here, and I'm glad you could do this for me.
No, thank you so much. I'm so grateful that, I could come and be a part of this. I'm super excited. I'm actually very passionate about, helping young people in the crossroads that I was once at. Not that I have that much to contribute. I'm also still starting out, but whatever little way I can help, it's thanks for giving me this opportunity. So it was so lovely talking to you, and I wish you the best of luck with what you're doing, because this is so amazing. At the time I started off, not many Indian podcasts were around doing this, and I honestly have heard mostly podcasts from America and Europe. So what you're doing is amazing. We need this in India, and like big claps for you. Really good job.
Thank you so much.